Hi, intro students. This is just going to be a really brief synopsis or just some thoughts on Paul Bloom, things I'd like you to keep in mind, okay, as we move through the course. The obvious things really stand out, right? This idea of selling someone on the quality of wine. For instance, if they're drinking the exact same wine and don't know it, but you say that one's more expensive than the other, the key thing that he's saying here that I think is pretty profound is that it's not that they just think that one of the wines is better tasting because of the cost. They actually experience it as better. So they actually are having more pleasure. So it's a really specific and particular distinction. So it's not just that they believe it's better, they actually experience it as better. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, because we're talking a lot, and we're going to move into this idea of cultural conditioning. And as I kind of laid out early in the course, but I'll reiterate here, our education is in art and fine art and art history is often pretty slim and weak in terms of the broader picture of what has been produced and made in terms of art in the world, or historically. So one thing I'd like to point out here is, this philosopher he brings up, Dennis Dutton, says the value of an artwork is rooted in the assumptions. Okay, remember that word, assumptions about the human performance underlying its creation. And so when someone believes and thinks that something's more valuable or worthy or is not art, or they have their subjective opinion, it's often rooted in this notion that there is a belief or an attachment to the difficulty, the labor, the skill, right? And it's really hard to define what we can constitute as difficult or worthy when we use metrics that are contested, right? So if it's time that we use as a metric, for instance, how much time, right? How much time constitutes something as being worthy or valuable in terms of the end product of an artwork, and how do you measure that time? Is it something that they have to present as part of the artwork, or is it the assumption that something, do you have to know the process by which something was made to know how difficult or how time consuming it was, and therefore it's valuable? Does it just have to exude or seem difficult to have been made? Those are things I want you to consider in terms of this idea of value, because we're going to talk about Pollock here. He brings up Jackson Pollock, and he juxtaposes that against a young girl who is kind of coached into making it. But this idea of the origin and our beliefs around the intention and origins of something is pretty profound, and I would argue that a lot of this has to do with our cultural conditioning, because I do not necessarily, on its face, I would say that a Jackson Pollock painting doesn't look necessarily difficult to manufacture, but and now I know, and looking into it, not only is it pretty difficult to make what Jackson Pollock made, but it was very radical and difficult to make it at the time that he was making it. Okay, and so that has a lot to do with the value that I personally place on somebody who is pushing a discourse and pushing art at a certain period farther or beyond what it is at the moment, or kind of contesting its boundaries. And that to me, I think, is a very difficult thing to do. But again, that's rooted in some assumptions that I have. So anyway, I think those are the kind of, there's a lot of little things in the video that I think we could delve into, but those are the things that I think are most meaningful, and I'd like you to walk away with. All right.